Okay, now we're going to sew on the gusset, and just as a reminder, you can do this with your zigzag for all of this, or serge and then cover stitch with your zigzag. So this is our gusset piece that we will be installing, and with the solids, it doesn't really matter which way you go, but if this had a pattern to it and you wanted the pattern on the outside, you would do right side to right side. So it would be upside down is what you would be looking at. So the first thing you have to do is consider this seam here. So when we installed the cuffs, this seam is naturally laying this way. So we want that seam to lay flat. I guess you could top stitch it if you wanted to, but I don't. We don't want it to twist because that's going to be a place for chafing. So we want to be sure that this seam is flat. So we have to hold it that direction. And then we're going to take our diamond, and one of the points on the short end, that's what lines up with your center seam here. So we're going to line that up and clip it in place. Now, when I first started making these shorts, I would pin this and then I would baste it in place with my regular sewing machine and then put it through the serger, because I did not have the confidence to kind of align everything the way that it needs to be aligned and run it through the serger, because you don't want pins in your serger. So if you feel like you want to do that, or if you want to use double-sided tape the first few times, you absolutely can. That's not a problem. Now we're going to line this up, and I like to put a pin, or excuse me, a clip right here where the curve of the short starts and that straight edge of the gusset. So I'm going to clip that there. And then up here on this point, so you can see that I'm turning it to get it to line up. Up here on this point is the one exception in my book to the no pins in the serger rule. But I'll show you how I get around that. But as I'm pinning it in, I'm just going to go through. I want to be sure that this pin catches up towards this point. So I'm going to keep that where it needs to be. So now I'm going to take this to my serger and I'm going to serge it on. Again, if you wanted to pin this differently and baste along here, you sure could. Okay, so now I've brought this over to my serger, and I'm going to start sewing about 1 inch above my gusset point. So I'm just going to tuck that in. I have a needle here, so I need to watch it with my blade, but I just tuck this in and I line it up alongside my blade. I'm not going to be cutting anything right now. So I'll put my foot down, and I'm going to very carefully, because I'm watching this needle start to serge. And once I see up here that the point of this diamond has been caught in the stitching, pull my needle. Line up these two edges, because I've got my clip here holding this in place. Hit that clip. Let's get out of my way. Come over here, serge to the next clip. Now I have to turn this corner. And this is another place where if you're not comfortable with your serger yet and you want to, this is a place where having basted this on beforehand would be really helpful. So here's my point. It's right here under my foot, and this is where the next angle of the diamond starts. So I'm going to just gently, without pulling it out from underneath the foot and without stretching anything, I'm just going to kind of maneuver this so that it is now lined up, and hold it. Let's maneuver it so it's lined up. Hold it, and then just kind of shift everything around the corner. So I just shifted that around that corner. Here's again where I'm lined up straight. Stop, and I'm going to line it up again right here. Go about 1 inch past it. off. And now I've got my gusset is serged on there. And I'm going to take it over and top stitch this down, which I'm going to use my cover stitch, but again, you absolutely could use a regular sewing machine. When you're getting ready to top stitch down your gusset seam, you need to decide what direction you want this to go, because it can go this way, this way towards the outside, or it can go this way towards the inside. I prefer towards the inside. So I'm going to start this up, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start it up here about an inch before my gusset. And I've got this, let's see if I can bring this over here so you can see it a little bit better. Got this turned that way, and I'm going to top stitch down along there. This might be easier to see. Okay, so I'm going to start sewing. And as it passes through my machine, I'm just going to kind of keep continually adjusting and making sure that things are flat, because that's the whole point of this, is to have flat seams. Now when I get here, I want to pull everything out and make sure that it's all lined up. Some cover stitch machines really don't like going over bumpy seams, so some people will hammer their seams down. I don't. I just press them really hard with my fingers. Just go slow. It's not a race. Okay, so that's now top stitch down, and we will do the other gusset. All right, so now we're going to attach the second leg by sewing the gusset onto the second piece. So again, we're going to start by making sure that this seam here is going to lay flat. So we're going to make sure that it's facing the right direction, and it is. And I'm going to grab my gusset, and this short point here is again going to line up with this seam, the inseam. We're going to place a clip there. And now I'm going to clip this in place, but I'm going to go all the way up this time. So as I shift and adjust this, just kind of clip as we go. Turn that corner. You can see it takes a little bit of finagling to get this to line up. And now I'm going to bring it all the way up here to the back seam of the shorts. This obviously, unfortunately, isn't going to line up here. That's fine. Don't stretch it to make it line up. We'll deal with that later. Okay, so now again, we've got that first half of the gusset pinned in place on our second leg, and now we're going to take it to the serger and sew it. So now we've got it here in our serger, and we're going to start stitching that together. We are going to sew over top of this and probably even cut some of it out. And that's okay. Here's where we're starting with our new gusset piece. Not the new gusset piece, I'm sorry. That's where we're going to start sewing off the shorts and onto the gusset to the other side. And always want to keep checking to make sure that you don't have your excess fabric underneath, because you don't want to get it caught in your blade. So here we are again at that short point of the diamond. So we're going to do the same thing that we did last time. Take that clip off and then just very carefully, without stretching, just work these so that they line up, serge around the corner, and then start sewing again. And now we're ready to top stitch our second seam. All right, with this second top stitch, it does take a little bit more thought to figure out which direction you want it to go, because if we want the top stitching on the gusset to go inward like our other one did, then we need to fold all of this to the left, starting all the way up here. This is, again, you're just going to kind of have to work and feel and sew. Make sure your seam is going the right way, because it doesn't always want to cooperate. One place that the cover stitch really doesn't like when you're doing this is this little junction right here, where the old gusset and top stitching meets up with the new, because there's a little bit of a bulky seam here, and the cover stitches don't really tend to like that. So again, some people hammer those down. I do not. I just kind of feel underneath there and make sure everything is lined up, and I press it down as much as I can. Feels like there's some extra fabric stuck under there. And I just kind of help it through my machine. So again, we're coming to that spot where we've got a lot of overlapping up here. Just making sure from the underside that everything is where it's supposed to be. Press that seam down. And help it out if needed. Okay, so we can take a little tour of our completed shorts. Got our seams are top stitched down so that they don't chafe. Got the top stitching on the outside so that it's, well, mostly it's so it doesn't chafe, but if you wanted to do it the other way and have it be decorative, you sure can. And we've got our gusset here also top stitched down so that it doesn't chafe. And our shorts are done.